Hello guys, let me show you something. Do you know? I think you must be. There is no need of an introduction. He is a legendary scientist, astronomist, and fiction writer, respected Jayant Narlikar sir. Jayant Narlikar sir wrote many fiction stories and novels. Actually, let me tell you first what is fiction. Fiction is a story or novel which is not real, which is imaginary story having imaginary characters. So such types of fictions he wrote into English and in our own Marathi too. In our Marathi, वामन परत न आला, यक्षांची देणगी, टाइम मशीनची किमया, अंतराळातील भस्मासूर. अंतराळातील भस्मासूर. I read it. And it is very interesting. You'll be surprised, guys, that why I'm telling you all these things about respected Jayant Narlikar sir. Actually, I want to introduce you one more fiction writer who is not Indian, but he's an American. And he also wrote the fiction stories and novels. One of his stories I too read. The story was Three Laws of Robotics. It is written by this legend, that is Isaac Asimov. Isaac Asimov was born on 2nd January 1920 and died on 6th April 1992. So he wrote so many, fiction stories. And today also we are going to see one of his fiction story, and that is The Fun They Had. Isaac Asimov wrote The Time Ahead. We are living in 2020 and he wrote the stories of 2157, that is 2157th year, means 150 years ahead of this time, almost 150 years ahead of this time. So let us see what is there in this story. That is The Fun They Had. This is Margie. This is Tommy. And this is Mrs. Jones, Margie's mama. Once, Tommy found very old book. To the surprise, it was printed on the paper. 1.2. The Fun They Had. Margie even wrote about it that night in her diary. 17 May 2157. Today, Tommy found a real book. It was a very old book. Margie's grandfather once said that when he was a little boy, his grandfather told him that there was a time when all stories were printed on paper. They turned the pages, which were yellow and crinkly, and it was awfully funny to read words that stood still instead of moving the way they were supposed to on a screen, you know. And then, when they turned back to page before, it had the same words on it when they read it the first time.
Gee, what a waste. When you are through with the book, you just throw it away, I guess. A television screen must have had a million books on it, and it's good for plenty more. I wouldn't throw it away.
Same with mine. Where did you find it?
In my house, in the attic.
What is it about?
School.
School? What's there to write about school? I hate school.
Margie always hated school, but now she hated it more than ever. The mechanical teacher giving her test in geography And she had been doing work until her shaken her head sorrowfully and sent for the county inspector. He was a round little man with a red face and a whole box of tools with dials and wires. He smiled at Margie and gave her an apple, then the teacher apart. Margie had hoped he wouldn't know how to put it together again, but he knew how all right. And after an hour or so, there it was again, large and black and ugly, with a big screen on which all the lessons were shown and the questions were asked. That wasn't so bad. The part Margie hated most was the slot where she had to put homework and test papers. She always had to write them out in a punch code they made her learn when she was 6 years old, and the mechanical teacher calculated the marks in no time. The inspector had smiled after he was finished and patted Margie's head. He said to her mother,
It's not the little girl's fault, Mrs. Jones. I think the geography sector was geared a little too quick. Those things happen sometimes. I have slowed it up to an average 10-year level. Actually, the overall pattern of her progress is quite satisfactory.
Margie was disappointed. She had been hoping they would take the teacher away altogether. They had once taken Tommy's teacher away for nearly a month because the history sector had blanked out completely.
Why would anyone write about school?
Because it's not our kind of school, stupid. This is the old kind of school that they had hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Centuries ago.
Well, I don't know what kind of school they had all that time ago. Anyway, they had a teacher.
Sure, they had a teacher, but it wasn't a regular teacher. It was a man.
A man? How could a man be a teacher?
Well, he just told the boys and girls things and gave them homework and asked them questions.
A man isn't smart enough.
Sure, he is. My father knows as much as my teacher. He knows almost as much. I betcha.
I wouldn't want a strange man in my house to teach me.
You don't know much, Maggie. The teacher didn't live in the house. They had a special building and all the kids went there.
And all the kids learn the same things.
Sure, if they were the same age.
But my mother says a teacher has to be adjusted to fit the mind of each boy and girl it teaches. And that each kid has to be taught differently.
Just the same, they didn't do it that way then. If you don't like it, you don't have to read the book.
I didn't say I didn't like it. Margie, school. Not yet, Mama. Now. And it's probably time for Tommy too. Tommy, can I read the book some more with you after school?
Maybe.
Margie went into the schoolroom. It was right next to her bedroom, and the mechanical teacher was on the waiting for her. It was always on at the same time every day, except Saturday and Sunday, because her mother said little girl learned better if they learned at regular hours. The screen was lit up and it said, Today's arithmetic lesson is on an addition of proper fractions. Please insert yesterday's homework in the proper slot. Margie did so with a sigh. She was thinking of they had when her grandfather's grandfather was a little boy. All the kids from the whole neighborhood came laughing and shouting in the schoolyard, going home together at the end of the day. They learned the same things so they could help one another with the homework and talk about it. Teachers were people. The mechanical teacher was flashing on the screen when we add fractions 1:2 and 1:4. Margie was thinking about how the kids must have loved it in the old days. She was thinking about the fun they had.